Got some business news now for you on the programme with Kate Moody, who's here on set with me. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Nadia.
Xi Jinping, then the Chinese leader, is wrapping up his trip to Europe. And you've been looking then at the economic ties between China and the European Union.
Absolutely. The Chinese leader oversaw the signing of billions of euros worth of deals between Chinese and both French and Italian businesses. He even secured Italy's commitment to become the first G7 nation to join its Belt and Road Initiative, despite some misgivings from Brussels. Overall, Chinese investment in France is on the rise, but its increased influence has also created controversy, and Emmanuel Macron has repeatedly called for more access for European companies. On Tuesday, though, he sought to show a united European front.
We have differences, but we respect China, and we are committed to dialogue and cooperation. We expect our partner to respect the EU and its values in return.
Analysis. We're joined by David Collins, Professor of International Economic Law at City University of London. Thanks for speaking to us this evening. How do you interpret what is something of a fine line for European leaders between encouraging Chinese investment and protecting national interests and industries?
It's a difficult question, and every country in the world is grappling with these issues, especially in relation to China, because it has such enormous market power. And in that sense, it represents an amazing opportunity for so many countries as a source of external finance. But we also have these suspicions. We've seen what's happened with Huawei, in particular, the computer company in Canada. And many states are nervous, especially when you look at investment in sensitive sectors like telecommunications, ports and infrastructure. And that, strange enough, seems to be precisely what the Belt and Road Initiative is aiming at. And then to make it even more interesting, these are precisely the areas that places like Italy really need foreign investment. So you have this interesting conundrum where you paradoxically need the investment from China and you want it, but then you're also worried about what the ultimate consequences could be in terms of national security. It's a very sensitive issue.
And how do you think Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel, who joined him at Tuesday's meeting, how do you think they've been dealing with that? Have they hit the right points?
Well, what Macron has done, I think, is entirely symbolic. And what he has done is as you probably realize, President Xi had originally intended to meet Macron one-on-one, bilaterally. This is France-China. And Macron said, no, in fact, this is basically an EU meeting. So he invited Angela Merkel, and he also invited one of the EU leaders as well, very much saying symbolically, you don't deal with France one-on-one, you deal with Europe as a superstate, which was the exact opposite with what we saw in Italy, which was very much a one-to-one. And I think the reason for this is obvious. The message is that the EU is much larger, much stronger, and if there is indeed a unified front, then it's the kind of place that China can't take advantage of. And we didn't see that with Italy. So that the message is very much, don't mess us around, I think.
Now, we heard a lot of talk about reciprocity. Did the Chinese leader give any indications that he was willing to budge on issues like opening up the domestic market to more foreign business?
Oh, I think very much that was part of it. And my understanding is that there were a number of contracts signed, at least with the Italian Prime Minister, in relation to Italian companies operating overseas. I think there was something to do with a wind farm. And obviously, in the context of France, there was sales of Airbus aircraft to the Chinese purchasers. So that is obviously offering something in return. We didn't see more profound commitments. And remember, we have an ongoing trade dispute between China and the U.S., which involves things like this forced technology transfer as a restriction on access for American companies into the Chinese market. We saw no movement on that at all. And we didn't see, as far as I know, any discussion about these very sensitive dumping issues, which are, of course, the allegation that China has been selling products too cheaply in the EU, taking advantage of the status as really having a non-market economy.
Now, you mentioned that ongoing trade spat with Washington. Does that make, from Beijing's point of view, ties with European economies even more important?
Yes, and I think it's precisely why Washington has been watching what Italy did with some trepidation. Italy signed a memorandum of understanding, which is perhaps again more symbolic than anything meaningful. But it did sign on to the One Belt, One Road initiative, and I think that makes some Western countries nervous. It's the first of the G7 countries to do that. Australia turned down the One Belt, One Road initiative, and I think this is making a unified Western front, if you want to include the U.S. in that, look a little shaky. And I wonder, is China's strategy something of a perhaps divide and conquer approach?
All right, Professor David Collins, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thanks for speaking to us on France 24 this evening.
Thanks.
Let's check in on the day's trading action now. The major European indices closed higher. The CAC 40 leading gains here in Paris. Airbus shares jumped about 2% after a Chinese order for some 300 of its airplanes. The pound sterling rising as the British Parliament moves towards another series of key votes on Brexit. Wall Street closed higher as well. The Dow Jones up about 1/3 of a percentage point on the close. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ doing better. Shares of Bed Bath & Beyond soared 26% on reports that its board of directors could be shaken up. Now, new figures suggest that violence linked to the Yellow Vest protests here in France has led to 200 million euros in insurance claims from businesses and individuals. French Insurance Federation said its data included the huge damage inflicted along the Champs-Élysées 10 days ago, which affected 91 businesses. The protest movement has been underway for over 4 months. In February, the government said they had already shaved 0.2% off the country's economic growth. And you can remember just how really devastating those scenes of violence were, Nadia, just about a week and a half ago. The Champs-Élysées, though, looking ahead to something new. The Galeries Lafayette department store is set to open a new outlet on the Champs-Élysées in the days to come. You'd imagine they'd be hoping very much that Saturday won't be a repeat of the violence we've seen in the past.
Indeed, I think that's certainly correct, Kate. Thank you very much indeed. That is Kate Moody with our business update on the programme.